He's gotta find stuff to do though. He's a pretty active guy, you know. If
Yeah.
he goes down there, he needs to be involved with some things.
Good evening, board members and residents. I would like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, September 22nd, 2014. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batanti.
Here.
Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Caprell.
Here.
Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. York is asked to be excused. Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkust.
Here. All right, thank you. Next is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes from September 8th, 2014, approval of the bills in the amount of $784,432.29, approval of the August 2014 revenue and expenditure report, approval to purchase road salt from the Department of Roads in the amount of $5,000, and approval to purchase discount Huron-Clinton Metro Park Authority 2015 annual park stickers to sell to Harrison Township residents, and that includes seniors.
We're going to be doing senior passes at the township now. The beach is going to allow us to do that, so we'll be expanding what we offer for sale.
So regular and senior passes.
Thank you.
All right, that's the consent agenda. If there's any questions, otherwise I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Batanti. Discussion, board members. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, the treasurer has asked that item D be removed from the agenda and tabled to our next meeting. I'm not aware of any other amendments to the agenda. Are there any other amendments? If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda with the proposed removal of item D.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda, removing item D.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Witt. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Caprell. Discussion, board members. Hearing none and seeing no public comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is announcements. Board members, we do have specifically a group here that would like to address the board. There are several upcoming events, and Mr. Caprell may want to comment on Hallowpalooza, but we encourage residents to visit the township website, harrison-township.org, and a lot of the upcoming events, both township events as well as community events, are displayed on the township website. And also, if you have questions about some of those events, you can call the supervisor's office at 586-466-1445. Mr. Caprell, anything to share on Hallowpalooza?
I do. We are having our second Hallowpalooza event, which is a trunk or treat event at Tucker Park. And the date is October 18th, which is a Saturday. And it'll start at 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock. And we have games and maybe a bonfire and some other things for the kids. So we'd like to see everybody come out and have a good time.
Free?
Absolutely free.
Free family event. Excellent. All right. Now we would recognize Turning Point. I believe there are some representatives here from Turning Point who would like to address the board and the residents of Harrison Township. We'd invite them to the podium at this time.
Here's some information. Do you want me to get it to you, or?
If you have, yeah, you can pass it out.
Thank you.
There's some ribbons, I think. I'll give you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Latos, and
And
this,
oh, go ahead, I'm Ruth DiCarlo.
and we are here as representatives from Turning Point. We are here because October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. For over 30 years, Turning Point has been providing emergency support and prevention services to our community. A total of 72 Harrison Township residents were served by Turning Point last year. Turning Point believes that education is the key to prevention. Last year, our prevention staff presented 40 educational sessions to 721 students in Harrison Township. We know that our program is making a difference. Students are learning that abuse is never the victim's fault. They are learning skills to develop equal and respecting relationships, how to be a responsible bystander, and how to help a friend or a peer. Harrison Township students who participated in the program increased their knowledge by these very important topics by about 29%. As community members, we can support these efforts by educating the children in our lives about equal and respecting relationships. We can educate ourselves about the myths and facts of domestic violence. And we can speak up when someone is blaming the victim. We can speak out if we witness harassment or abuse. We take this opportunity to invite all of you, our public officials, to the many planned events throughout the community this month, and to please wear a purple ribbon to raise awareness and support solutions to end family violence. Only through the active involvement from the entire community will be able to end domestic violence. We also ask that you share what you have learned about Turning Point and domestic violence awareness with at least one person in your personal life, that you model healthy relationships to young people, and volunteer your time. Turning Point, Macomb County's only domestic violence and sexual assault shelter, newly opened our 52 beds, 12,000 square foot protective housing facility. This shelter provides 13 handicap accessible suites with 9 with in-suite baths, a playground, a state-of-the-art security system, and a family-focused living environment. This expansion resulted in a 30% increase in capacity. We are now much more better equipped to provide life-saving support, which is a vital part of the region's safety net. We wouldn't have been able to accomplish this goal without the wonderful support of the entire community. We want to recognize the members of this community who volunteer at Turning Point and who support Turning Point through their donations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think this is a change. My memory suggests that in past, the ribbons were maybe kind of teal or aquamarine in color.
That's for sexual assault, I think.
Oh,
That's for
okay,
sexual
okay.
assault.
So this is something.
Domestic violence is always purple.
Okay, so this is something, I don't think you guys have been before the board then, before.
I think they were last year. I know it wasn't us personally.
Okay. I don't recall receiving purple ribbons, but
Okay.
I appreciate the awareness and we'll make our best attempt to try to spread that message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any announcements they would like to make?
Mr. Supervisor,
Okay.
if I can, I would like to announce that on September 5th, as many of you know, the St. Hubert Fall Festival came to an abrupt halt because of the weather and the high winds. The reason I'm talking about that tonight is because on behalf of St. Hubert's and all their parishioners, I want to thank the Harrison Township firefighters. I want to thank the Clinton Township firefighters, the Harrison Township CERT team who was on site and helped out when the tents collapsed. I also want to thank the Selfridge firefighters and MedStar Ambulance Services who all responded to our disaster. It was quite a night, but everybody pulled together. There were just a few minor injuries, a lot of damage, but I do want to thank all the first responders, especially the Harrison Township Fire Department. I know there were a few of the fellas that weren't even on duty that night that responded to our our disaster. So, again, on behalf of St. Hubert's Church, thank you very much.
Thank you. We just had our Harrison Township EDC golf outing today, so thanks to all the folks that supported that event. And there've been several events. We had the boating and expo, so been pretty active here the last few weeks here in Harrison Township. Next on the agenda, item B, the Special Assessment District for the Stellamar subdivision, lot number 1, Point Rosa subdivision, number 5, lots 211 through 219, and the Malice subdivision, number 1, lots 21 through 30, and 32 for road improvements. Mr. Witt.
Thank you. At our August 29th meeting, the board adopted a resolution which set today as the public hearing of necessity for the paving improvements to the aforementioned area on Wall and Mass Street. This hearing was given notice to people both in the Macomb Daily and then again in the Advisor. We also sent out letters to everyone informing them that this is their opportunity to either speak for or against the project concerning the tax assessment of the special assessment. So what we would need to do first is open the public hearing and invite anyone up to speak, and then we'll close the public hearing after that and either just discuss whether or not to proceed with the further resolutions to move the project forward.
All right, so at first order of business is to open tonight's public hearing regarding this special assessment district. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved, Mr. Supervisor.
All right, you have a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Caprell to open the public hearing at about 7:16 p.m. Discussion, board members.
So,
It's a roll.
Hearing no discussion and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Tominello,
yes.
Mr. Caprell,
Yes.
Mr. Patanti,
Yes.
Mr. Brado,
Yes.
Mr. York is excused, Mr. Witt, yes, Mr. Verkust.
Yes. All right, so as of this moment, our public hearing regarding the special assessment district is officially open. Anyone who's present who wishes to publicly speak for or against the project is allowed to approach the podium and speak.
Come after the
Yep, you're welcome to come to the podium. Yep.
Yeah, I live on Mass.
Can you
on
please
the
state
corner.
your name and address just so we
My name
can...
is Maria Vernier, 38025 Mass Street in Harrison Township. And I live on the very corner, and if they're gonna go ahead and do it, I'm for just paying, when they pave the street, that's what I should pay for. I don't think I should pay the house, per house, whatever they said I should do. I never signed anything that was for or against it. So I think they should go, if they're gonna do it, it would be a lot cheaper for me, because I live on Social Security and I can't afford to pay per house like they set it up for. I'm on the very corner and I don't even use much of the street. I have a
Okay.
lot of seawall though, I pay a lot on my seawall, but I don't have a lot of street. So I don't know why I should pay a lot. I think that's about all I have to say, thank you.
Sure.
I got a public comment. I don't live in the area, William Bardell, 37865 Point Rosa. I'm not in the district, but you always go by the frontage by foot. So people need to knock on doors, and that's the way to do it. If you got a 150-foot lot, you pay by the foot. If you got a 60-foot lot, you pay by the foot. You know that's the right thing to do. You pay by the foot. How much street you have, you pay by the foot. You don't pay by the lot. So whoever the block captain is or whatever, maybe they need to tighten it up. Play by the foot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment regarding the resolution associated with the Special Assessment District for repaving, typically known as Wall, I suppose Wall and Mass Street. Seeing no other public comment, I'd be looking for a motion to close the public hearing at about 7:18 PM. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Supervisor, I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
We have a motion by Mr. Batanti. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Brado. Discussion regarding the motion, board members. Hearing no discussion and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call to close the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Verkowski?
Yes. To the best that we're able, we'll try to address some of those public comments.
I probably could answer pretty quickly.
Yep.
The reason that this is set up on a per lot basis was a decision of the group. This isn't something that the township made the decision. This was the general field. This is what was signed up for when the petitions were circulated and signed. So when the residents did sign an approval, not everyone did sign an approval, but those that did sign an approval, right around 70%, signed with the understanding that that would be on a per lot basis. So that was a decision by those homeowners, not by the township at this point.
Right. So that's one, I think that's probably the most important point to make, that the decision as to how to assess or distribute those costs is not a township decision, but ultimately a decision by the neighborhood. But it's important to understand that the front footage assessment, for the most part, can be very equal, but it can affect some people on perhaps an inside corner in a minimal way, but it can have a huge impact to somebody who's on the outside corner. So there would be at least one homeowner perhaps who might have as much as, say, 75 foot of frontage on one road and another 100 foot of frontage on another road, and that person might be assessed with an abnormally large amount. When all is said and done, generally speaking, you've got perhaps one or two vehicles per home that travels up and down that road on a daily basis. Some people might have children or other guests in their home that have extra cars, but for the most part, traveling up and down that road is equally shared by every homeowner as a general consensus. That doesn't mean that it's the township's opinion that it should be per lot or per front footage, but the front footage formula is one option, and some people are adversely affected by that to the good or to the bad. But the per lot formula is one way to split up an assessment where if you do have a corner, an inside and outside corner, one person's a winner, one person's a loser. Per lot tends to distribute it evenly. But Mr. Witt's point, I think, is probably most valid. It's not a decision that the board makes. It is a decision of the people in that district, how they choose to circulate the petition and how they choose to sign and respond to the petition. So, Mr. Witt, that was item B1 and B2. We've had a public hearing regarding those items. There is no required action at this point by the board?
But then the next step that we have before us tonight on item 3 is to adopt resolution number 3 in the special assessment process, which declares the project a necessity and directs the township clerk, myself, to prepare an assessment roll for review. After we do that, the board will then consider resolution number 4, which sets our second public hearing, which we're suggesting to be held on October 14th, 2014. And just speaking to that one, thanks to Trustee Capral's help this morning, I noticed we just had a little typo on resolution number 4. Under the therefores, number 2, it says September 22nd, 2014. It should read October 14th to reflect the date of that assessment. And again, this will go in the Macomb Daily and the Advisor. And then we'll also send notice to the property owners again so that they'd have that opportunity to come to the meeting and speak on the project again.
All right, so items B1 and B2 don't require any further action.
Correct.
So, item B3 is potentially a motion to adopt resolution number 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Is there any discussion on item B3, or is there a motion to adopt resolution number 3 for Maston Wall Street Road Improvement SAD project as presented?
Mr. Supervisor, just a question, I think I may have asked this before, is this a private road, do you know?
The clerk probably has more knowledge of it. The answer is about 75% versus 25%.
The way the county looks at it is that it's pretty much a private road for all intents and purposes of the amount of maintenance that they're doing. The hope is that because they're doing this through the county, that it will be able to be turned over to the county as a public road and sort of take some of the burden off the property owners once they do this work. So,
Okay. And then I guess the second part of my question is, do all the participants and homeowners in this area, are they aware of our road millage ballot that's coming up in November? Are they aware of that as well?
we had that discussion with them when we had the informal meeting. I don't know if it was, I don't remember timing wise if the ballot proposal had been fleshed out, but they were informed of the study group that we had and what some of the preliminary findings were,
Okay.
so that they can make an educated decision. I think part of the reason this is happening now is so they sort of have their ducks in a row, first in line to say, hey, I know there might be some money through this millage. We're gonna have the special assessment to get our other portion of it, and maybe we can be the first in line for it.
Okay.
So,
And before we go any further, I maybe my notes are wrong. I only showed that we had a motion by Mr. Tominello. And so before we have too much discussion, did I not note a second, or was there not a second to that motion?
I don't believe.
I don't think he
there
made a
was a
motion.
I
He
don't
just
think I
asked a
made
question.
motion, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jotted it down as I made an
No.
assumption.
Yeah, just a.
All right,
discussion.
so then along those same lines, I know that both, well, myself or the supervisor's office, members, folks here at the township, as well as residents who live in this area, have made numerous requests and had pretty in-depth discussion with the folks in the Department of Roads regarding whether this is public or private. And there is an argument that says maybe as much as 25% of this area is public, 75% is private. But we've received legal opinions repeatedly that said that primarily this is a private road, and the Department of Roads treats it as such. So short of what I would probably say would be litigation, Department of Roads says that's a private
Okay.
road.
And the other reason I'm asking is I believe there's different provisions in the ballot proposal for private and public, right?
Correct.
So that's the only reason I brought that up. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I do believe that at least a lot of the folks who were active in circulating the petitions are aware of the pending road millage and the issues associated with it.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's any other discussion regarding resolution number 3, or if there's possibly a motion to adopt resolution number 3 for Maston Wall Streets.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 3 for Masson Wall Street Road Improvement SAD as presented.
All right.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Caproll to adopt resolution number 3 for Maston Wall Street Road Improvement Special Assessment District as presented this evening. Is there discussion from the board? Hearing no discussion, and I know there was some confusion earlier. If there is an interest on the part of anyone who's at tonight's meeting, we do have 2 chairs up front, what we call them on-deck chairs. If anyone wishes to speak to an item on the agenda, once we make a motion, we invite folks to sit in the on-deck chair so that we're aware that there is an interest in public comment. But I will call for, at this time, if there is any interest in public comment regarding the adoption of foregoing resolution number 3 for Maston Wall Street Road Improvement SAD project. Hearing no public comment, Mr. Tominello, did you indicate, was there something you wish to speak to?
You know, I'm sure it's in here, and I'm trying to look through it. So the average cost per lot on the SAD is 6607? Because it's
The-
broken down into two different lots.
Yeah, the cost will be just around $7,000 per lot. The engineer's original technical memorandum there broke it down based on the average frontage.
Okay.
But when you take the 142 estimated cost and divide it by the 20 lots, you just a little bit over $7,000.
And that's a special assessment district that will be amortized over how many years on taxes?
That
8?
one,
Looks like about 8 years. This
They-
proposal was 8 years.
yeah. Is it 8 or is it? I think it's 10.
Well, 858 times 6607, at least this proposal, the engineer's technical memorandum is based on what appears to be 8 years. But the resolution may, in fact, address 10-year period.
Actually, it says, assessments typically financed over a 10-year period. Okay, I read my own answer.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much.
yeah.
Okay.
The second, that when we come back and do resolution number 5, that'll speak to the actual
Okay.
levying of the assessment and the,
So that's approximately
time frame.
$700 a year.
yeah,
And
and-
one of the residents was concerned about that, so just,
and just, I know what some people have looked at with the special assessment process that's for the canal cleanup. They ended up paying it all up front and were able to get a better interest
Sure.
rate through a credit union or something like that. so.
okay.
All right. Any other discussion, board members? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Capral to adopt resolution number 3 for Mast and Wall Street Road Improvement Special Assessment District Project as presented. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Verkust?
Yes.
Resolution's adopted.
All right. It appears that we also have a second resolution regarding setting the date for public hearing number 2 at our next board meeting. It appears that the board packet suggests it would be October 14th. So it looks like another motion would be in order to adopt resolution number 4 for Mast and Wall Street Road Improvement Special Assessment District. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 4 for the Maston Wall Street Road Improvement SAD project, with the change on, item number 2 to read October 14th instead of September 22nd.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Witt. Is there support?
Support.
Support by, was that Mr. Tominello?
Mr. Batanti?
Mr. Petanti, I'm sorry. All right. Board members, are any discussion on this resolution?
I do have a question, Mr. Supervisor.
Sure.
In our next meeting, can we then clarify on the projected cost? Because I do agree that it is somewhat confusing in terms of the average cost per lot and then annual assessment. It doesn't look like 10 years, but, so is there some way that we could just include that so that,
That'll be part of the resolution.
okay, so we will have
It
that.
defines the terms of the way that lien is placed against the property
Okay.
if it's not paid in full at the front.
Okay.
And that's really, I mean, this is a part of that two-step process or two-meeting process involving a public hearing and so forth, correct?
Yep.
So I think the short answer to Mr. Batanti's question is that it would likely be more clear at our October 14 meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion, board members? Hearing no further discussion and seeing no public comments regarding resolution number 4, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Batanti to adopt resolution number 4 for Mast and Wall Street Road Improvement Special Assessment District as presented. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York is excused. Mr. Verkust?
Yes.
Resolution's adopted.
All right, thank you, Board. Next on our agenda would be item C1. Board members, we have received an application for reappointment from Mr. Herb Lorenz for the Beautification Commission. Mr. Lorenz has served on the committee for several years, and he has definitely been a valuable member. I would recommend his reappointment to the Beautification Commission for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire November 13, 2015.
Motion to reappoint Mr. Herb Lorenz to the Beautification Commission for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire November 13, 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support. Mr. Brado.
Support by Mr. Brado to reappoint Mr. Lorenz. Discussion, board members. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Brado to reappoint Mr. Herb Lorenz to the Beautification Commission for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire November 13th, 2015. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. We're fortunate to have the entire Beautification Commission, and certainly Mr. Lorenz is one key part of that. So thank you to him and to all the members. Next on our agenda is item C2, another appointment. Board members, our township ordinance requires the appointment as a noxious weed commissioner to address noxious weeds throughout the township. Recently, we hired Mr. Brent Condon, and therefore I would recommend that we appoint Mr. Brent Condon as the Deputy Noxious Weed Commissioner for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire May 14, 2016.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Capital. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Batanti. Discussion, board members? Hearing none, we'll open the floor for public comment.
How you doing? William Bardell. I don't have any objections to having a weed commissioner. In the past, I know we had a weed commissioner, and as I look through some of my research, I see that the city of Warren has a 6-inch weed limit. I notice Mount Clemens has a 8-inch weed limit, and of course Harrison Township has a 12-inch weed limit. But enough about that, basically. But the last guy that was the weed commissioner, I think if we have a weed commissioner, this ought to be across the board. So if our friends at Lake St. Clair Beach, once we get our passes, hopefully at a non-inflated rate, I know they went from 15 to 24, and if you move decimal places around, you can figure out what the percentage is. So inflation's 1.7, so 0.017 times whatever. So they're, $24 for residents. Okay, once we make the deal with our Metropolitan Beach to get our passes for our residents and our senior discounts, I think Mr. Brent Condon needs to call Metro Beach to the mats on their weeds, their 3-foot ragweeds growing over the curb at Metropolitan Parkway and Crocker. 3-foot ragweeds at the end of the season, that's 2 feet more than the 12 inches growing over the curbs out there. There's no detailing out around the trees, around the little guardrails. They're doing a half-assed job. Metropolitan Beach, St. Clair Beach, whatever you want to call them, is responsible for Jefferson to Utica on Metropolitan Parkway, both sides. They're responsible for detailing around the trees, around the signs, around the turnarounds, and they're doing a half-assed job. Take a look at Metropolitan Parkway west of Utica. That's done by the Road Commission, and they sub it out to, I believe it's Landslide or somebody out there. But that's the worst-looking center island I've seen in my life. It's worse looking than Gratiot. It's worse looking than 8 Mile. It's Hall Road, Gratiot, Mound, 8 Mile, you name it. Every single center island looks better than from Jefferson to Utica. All I'd like this new guy to do, this new man on campus, Mr. Condon, to do, is call this guy and tell him to tighten it up, trim around the signs, don't leave wood chips at 16 Mile and Harper for 3 years. I've been calling up for 3 years on them. They're sitting there rotting. put those around the trees so you don't kill the trees when you weed whack around the trees like normal landscaping people do. I called this guy at Metro Beach and I said, you guys are breaking all the landscaping 101 rules. Believe me, my 55 years of being on this earth, I've killed many trees detailing around them and not without the wood chips. So I hope if we have a weed man that he enforces the weed ordinances and with our wonderful beach over here. We're lucky we have a wonderful beach and we don't have a steel mill right there. We have a wonderful beach. But at the same token, they need to detail out the center island all the way down, the four corners, the center island, and do a nice detailed job. I even told this man in charge of the maintenance, have 2 guys with vests on, walk from Utica all the way to Jefferson, do all the weed whacking. Then a week later, you ride the lawnmower and do the job. They're doing a half-assed job. Just for your research, for everybody on the board, take a look at Metropolitan Parkway west of Utica, then look east of Utica. Other than the beautification committees at Metro Parkway and Gratiot, the little corners there, the beautification committee does, Clinton Township, and the beautification committee at Metropolitan Parkway and that next street down there. Other than that, Gratiot and then the next one, it's trashed. So they're doing a half-assed job. So I just want our new man on campus to call this guy up after we get our discounted passes, after we make that deal. And then when you want to tee these guys off, call them up and tell them to tighten it up. This is Harrison Township. We shouldn't have the worst-looking center island. It's worse than 8 Mile. It's worse than 8 Mile. It's terrible. Take a look at it. Go out there on your way home, jump in your little car, take a look at that corner there. Somebody even threw a 5-gallon bucket out there. So, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Yeah, Tony Zadonia, 37655 Lakeshore Drive, board member, Huron Point Homeowners Association. I remember this past summer that there were a decent amount of weeds in between the bike path and South River Road, and those kind of went on for several weeks. So I guess just 2 questions. Who manages that area? Would it be this weed captain or weed committee? I guess, I don't know the terminology that you folks used earlier. Or is it the actual road commission that manages that strip? And my second question would be for the person that we're looking to appoint, is there like a priority list or a pecking order or a rotation that this person would go and kind of manage the more public areas, and then, you know, after that, there's some other type of priority list? Thank you.
Yep, well, I can address that, thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Specific to that area along what's recently been dedicated as the Staff Sergeant Aragon V. Osmond Memorial Path, basically running from South River and Jefferson eastward to Lakeshore. The short answer is that stretch of the road right-of-way is maintained by the Department of Roads. Maybe a more detailed answer would be to say that same statement is true about the islands and the shoulders along Metro Parkway. There was a time when, based on the usage of those shoulders and islands, that their maintenance schedule was kind of dictated by one schedule. What's happened is, if we go back to the installation of the Freedom Trail, what we found is that we now had this asset, this, public improvement that people regularly used. So we found that we needed to mow it more frequently. We found that we needed to plow it in the wintertime, sweep it when we had leaves and debris that might accumulate on that path for the use of the residents. As we've installed a path that runs parallel to South River in the area that we just discussed, technically, that's still the responsibility of the Department of Roads. The Department of Roads maintains a mowing schedule that might not coincide with the level of maintenance that we'd want, so that people aren't walking through an area that's overgrown. Or when they do mow it, we end up with a level of debris that exceeds what we consider reasonable for folks that use that path. So, I'm not good at short answers, but the short answer to the question is, in the old days, Department of Roads maintained that. Long-term, what we need to do is we need to contract with the Huron-Clinton Metro Park Authority or a private contractor to more regularly maintain that, because the level of grooming that we want in that area needs to be a level that coincides with, say, the area along the Freedom Trail, along Metro Parkway. People utilize that trail enough to where we need to basically maintain it more. We can request additional maintenance from Department of Roads, but they treat that as kind of a shoulder and not necessarily an area that would be groomed to the level that we'd want. So I know that Mr. Tominello, as a representative of the Huron Point Homeowners Association, has brought that to my attention. And we either need to work with HCMA or a private contractor in future years to maintain that at a higher level.
Why wouldn't we have the property owner along that bend cut it like any other property owner who abuts a public road?
Well, in fact, what happened was, and it's interesting that we're talking about this.
I know it's off topic.
Oh, no, that's a great question. It happened last year with our previous ordinance officer, and he did just that, said, hey, this isn't being maintained. Several sections of the road are really not, I mean, ultimately, HCMA, through a grant, is purchasing a lot of that land. So ultimately, that will transfer to their responsibility. But this did happen last year, and we had several homeowners saying, well, I've never maintained it before. Road Commission's always, or Department of Roads has always maintained it. I got this bill for $2,000 to maintain this stretch, and how come I'm getting billed for it? I've never been billed for it before. So it is kind of it's a transfer of responsibility. Realistically, this board needs to realize, as we install paths, as we make these public improvements, we are inherently assuming a certain level of responsibility to maintain it. That path is a little different than a sidewalk, and especially in some of the areas where it travels, the property owner is a public entity. So one way or another, the residents of Harrison Township are going to pay for the maintenance of that. It's a little different than the sidewalk on your street. But HCMA has been an incredible partner. They're very, very reasonable in their rates. Typically, their summertime maintenance is done by a lot of college kids, high school kids. The rate that they charge us is very, very reasonable. So I think in the long term, that's probably our most reasonable way to get that work done.
Mr. Supervisor, I do have a comment.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, at Mr. Bardell's request, he took me for a drive to take a look at some of these things through his eyes.
Mhm.
And I think it was very beneficial, and I thank you for that. I think sometimes we have to see things the way other people see them in order to just have a little bit of more of an awareness. So it seems to me that there are several stakeholders involved in this. The township itself, the park authority, the road commission, we have a beautification committee, and I would be willing to represent the board in sort of some type of working group to see what we can at least do to raise awareness and what options are available to address some of these concerns. I'd be more than happy to do that. I have the time and I have the interest. So I'm making that comment. I thank Mr. Bardell for his attention to this and his passion for the community and this other gentleman. I appreciate that, and I'd like to do something to help.
Sure.
So I'd like to make myself available to help coordinate efforts between the stakeholders, at least to hold some discussions to see what options we have to address some of these well-founded issues.
Yep, and I appreciate that. As a general statement, I mean, ultimately, the item before us really is a separate nature from what we're discussing, but for the purposes of kind of following up on that. Really what happens is this. When I was a kid, the side of Metro Parkway got mowed once a month. and there was a nice little narrow dirt track, and if you wanted to go to a high school football game and mom and dad weren't gonna drive you, you walked down this little dirt path. As time went on, and we put in a path, and since then we've improved and widened it, and clearly it's a gem. People use it all the time. With that has come a cost to maintain that area, both in the winter and in the summer, that we didn't have in the past. So, as a general statement, as we enhance walkability in our community, it needs to be understood by this board that all of the residents of Harrison Township, through one tax or another, paid to cut that area 30 years ago once a month. And they didn't pay for someone to plow it. Now, we pay someone to cut it maybe once a week or every other week, and we pay someone all winter to plow it. We're basically transitioning to that. We're getting to a point where we're saying the residents have a need to maintain these road right-of-ways more frequently. As an example, up and down Jefferson between South River and Metro Parkway, on the west side, we've got a path. We pay someone to plow it. And sometimes with that comes springtime, we need to, put a little sod, plant some grass seed, make some improvements where the plow might have veered off the path. And we get complaints from residents. We never had that before. The east side of Jefferson, we don't do anything. It's just a bunch of, Phragmites or whatever happens to be mowed there in a lot of areas. So as we improve these areas, we do assume that responsibility. And I really think the concerns along South River Road are a function of growing pains associated with the addition of these assets. Having said that, practically every real estate listing in the Huron Point subdivision comes with a statement by the real estate agent saying it's connected to the path system. It's an asset that not any of us are saying is important, but literally the private sector, those real estate agents are saying, we're connected to the paths. This is a gem, this is an asset, this property is more valuable because of that investment. So I think it's a good thing, but we just need to catch up with some of the maintenance.
I just want to, first of all, thank the supervisor actually for working with me and the Department of Roads, because when we requested them to cut that area in question, and that's the path along South River Road from Jefferson to Huron Point, the Road Commission has been very responsive. They've cut it within 2 or 3 days from requisition. I want to thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for helping us out and helping me out and working with me and getting that done. Thank you.
Right. Well, no, and they're responsive, but they're just not set up to do the level of maintenance that we're looking for. So we're probably going to have to talk to our friends at HCMA to say, is this something you can do? And if they can't, then we may have to include it in our regular cuts that the township pays for.
And that's our private contractors being bid out at beginning of next year.
Yep. Come springtime, this board will be rebidding our park maintenance, our township property maintenance, fire stations, etc. At that same time, if HCMA can't assume that responsibility, we'll have to include that. It's just not an option. We need to maintain that better than it has been in the past.
And having said that, Mr. Supervisor, again, I'm willing to volunteer to help coordinate some of that discussion.
Well, we can get a weed whacker and some goggles for you.
Or we can do that. Another option.
Well, we did close the floor for public comment, but we certainly will open the floor for public comments at the end for any item. So, is there any other board discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Caprow with support by Mr. Batanti to appoint Mr. Brett Condon as our Deputy Noxious Weed Commissioner for the remainder of a 2-year term to expire May 14, 2016. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. We kind of got off topic of merely appointing someone as a weed commissioner, so trying to move it along. Item D1 has been asked to be tabled. Next on the agenda is item E1. Board members, in the board packet is the municipal credit and community credit contract for fiscal year 2015. This is a contract between SMART and the Charter Township of Harrison. Included is the necessary backup material to receive funding for this contract. The credits in this contract help to fund our Dial-A-Ride shopping shuttle and summer shuttle services. To receive our credits, the board must approve this contract. For fiscal year 2015, we anticipate receiving $24,168 in municipal credits, maintaining the same funding level, and $66,671 in community credits, an increase of $8,721 from 2014 funding. I would recommend a motion to approve the SMART municipal credit and community credit contract for fiscal year 2015 as presented.
Motion to approve the SMART municipal credit and community credit contract for fiscal year 2015.
We have a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Witt to approve the SMART contracts as presented for 2015. Discussion, board members. Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment. Seeing no public comment, there is a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Witt to approve the SMART municipal credit and community credit contract for fiscal year 2015 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda is public comments. We'll open the floor for public comments. They can be of any subject, 5 minutes in length.
Okay. Yeah, William Bardell, 37865 Point Rosa, 18-year resident. What I want to know is on the situation with Metropolitan Parkway, with the detailing out around the signs, the wood chips around the trees, their general maintenance of that corridor. Now, one thing is, are we going to call my question is, are we going to call the maintenance guy from Metropolitan Parkway? I left a message with you, your office, the top man on campus on that. Give him a call. He's tired of hearing from me, but I was wondering if you can give him a call. Or are we going to throw more money at them and hope that they do the job? Because with new landscaping procedures, new materials, new ways of doing things, new ways of landscaping, for instance, have been improved since 1970. Gross domestic output has improved, production has improved, not just because people work harder, it's because we have new and better material. You may have noticed that I-96 was finished ahead of time. That's because people, of course, are working harder, but you have better materials, you have better equipment, you have better production methods. With that being said, I would like you to get a hold of the top man on campus at our Metropolitan Beach and tell them to tighten it up a little bit. They're not that far off, but what happens is it gets away from them. They detailed it out twice in 1 year. I mean, they got to do more than that. I mean, if they, once every 3 weeks, detail around the trees, not leave a pile of wood chips sitting at Metropolitan Parkway in Crocker for 4 years. I mean, anywhere where it sticks out like a sore thumb, your turnarounds, around the trees, around the telephone poles. These are basic lawn service things that they do. They do it on Gratiot Avenue, they do it on Hall Road, they do it on Mound, they do it on 8 Mile. It's the worst looking corridor. Or do we want to just throw money at them and say, here's more money, here's more money? They won't do it. There's new ways of landscaping nowadays. There's new methods. There's new production methods. The second thing I want to talk about is when we do get this new ordinance man, I've complained about it might be a bank-owned house, but a pile of junk sitting there for 3 weeks. 3 months, 4 months. I mean, I could see maybe the bank owning it, maybe a house flipper, a pile of junk on the curb for maybe a month. It's 4 months, nothing's been done. I've complained about a pile of junk. Somebody trims their tree and they got a pile of junk in front of their house for 4 months. I mean, we can do better than that. I mean, how about a month? How about a week? I mean, I bag my stuff up. When I trim my stuff, I bag it up and put it in. I mean, 3 months? We got 2 vacant houses that got to get torn down. I mean, okay, I can see, the bank goes around and around and around with all the bank deregulation. You don't know who owns the house, and you know which bank owns it with all the deregulation. you know, after W said that you didn't have to have the capital collateral to make these risky investments, the economy went to pot in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and half of 2013. So with that being said, you're going to have some house flippers and you're going to have some movement. But, I mean, I can see a year, but 2 years, 3 years, the house has got to get torn down. We deserve better than that. If a slumlord buys 20 houses and we have 10 of them and we don't say nothing, he's going to tear the ones down in Warren because we didn't say nothing. If I'm a landlord and I've got 20 houses and Harrison Township doesn't say nothing to me, I'm going to work on the ones in Warren, and I ain't going to work on the ones in Harrison Township. We got to hold these banks accountable. We got to hold whoever owns these houses that are foreclosed, whatever. Remember, the banks are getting 0% interest. They're getting free money. Imagine if you got free money with zero and you could do anything you want. We got 2 houses that we got to tear down right now that I can see. You know, piled junk wood there for 4 or 5 months. I think we can do better than that. So I hope our new man on campus can take care of these issues and not be afraid of these banks. You know, they got Glass-Steagall. They got everything they wanted. You know, when Glass-Steagall, they flipped it around and put the mom and pop banks with the investment banks. And then sky was the limit. They made all these predatory loans and everybody lost their house because people don't know what principal is and people don't know what interest is. So it's 8th grade shop math, but continue on and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Zadonia, 37655 Lakeshore Drive, board member, Huron Point Homeowners Association. I've been questioned by several of our community members regarding the yet-to-be-installed park equipment for Awney Park that we apparently still have in some type of storage facility. I spoke with Larry Tominella recently about the equipment, and apparently we're waiting on some type of installation estimate. So the park needs the equipment, and I think that once we install it, I think that park will become some type of a catalyst for younger children, parents going there and meeting other parents in the community, because currently it's really just a vacant space within our housing community, and there's really nothing to draw, you know, the residents there. So I know we've got this equipment. I first heard about the equipment, I think it was in January at one of the HPHA meetings. And so we're almost working on a year here of having that stuff stored. I know it got torn down and donated to us, is what my understanding is. They didn't cut it the right way or remove it the right way. So I'm just wondering what we can do to, you know, put some priority on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. I'll do my best to address some of the questions or issues from residents. Number one, contacting HCMA, no problem there. I will tell the residents and the board members that I will have contact with HCMA. At the risk of sounding argumentative, I want to make sure that I make it clear, this isn't a function of throwing money at them. And the reason why I say that is this. This board approves the contract annually that we have with HCMA. They plow the path, they mow along Metro Parkway, they do an awful lot of maintenance for us. The most recent invoice that comes to mind was something like $2,400 or $2,500. It's not a monetary issue with HCMA, and by that, what I mean to say is they are a good municipal partner. They charge us their expenses. They're very, very reasonable to work with. But as we grow, as the size of our path system grows, as our needs grow, we need to work with them to point out what their concerns are. So the short answer is I will definitely talk to the park manager about our concerns with maintenance. That's a reasonable request. there was a comment about wood chips. I think the wood chips are at 16 in Harper and not 16 in Crocker. That's not in our area. But same thing applies. I drive by, I see it. You think, gee whiz, how long is this gonna sit here? You know, somebody thought this was a thing to do, and so it's a little unsightly. But we will talk to the folks at HCMA and ask them to step up their maintenance along the path. We do have a new ordinance officer. It's important to note that our building department has, we ultimately employ 2 individuals that have both the credentials for building inspection. And as this board knows, because we ultimately voted to terminate the employment of 1 individual, in that department, we've been short 1 person for a period of time. There are definitely some projects, some things that need to be done, and we just have not had the manpower. You know, good answer is we'll be in the black in our budget, but the bad answer is for a time we've been short someone in our department to address ordinance, and we've been asking 1 individual to wear 2 hats. So hopefully, once we get this new fella up to speed, we're going to be able to address some of those ordinance issues. The park equipment was donated to us. In fact, the contractor that the military hired prior to us being able to get on base and remove it did in fact cut off a lot of the posts at the ground, leaving them in the concrete and requiring that the amount of work that's needed to install that is greater than what we originally contracted for. So this board did consider quotes from 3 or 4 contractors to remove the equipment and reinstall it. The contractor, who was the low bidder, came back since the removal and said, look, the amount of work that we quoted is at 1 level, but the amount of work that it's going to take to install this is at a much higher level. So we've asked that contractor, he's a local guy, he's a pretty well-respected fellow in the community, can you take another look, and is it possible that you can still do that work? If you cannot do it, then we'll have to go back and solicit further bids. Since we acquired that park equipment, the playground equipment, annually we have a half marathon that runs through the township. And every year we ask for a grant from the proceeds of that half marathon. And I know at least we have at least $4,000, if not $6,000 that we've received. So we have received funds that we've earmarked to help offset that cost. But the bottom line is, when we're done, we've asked someone to quote the work, they quoted the work, they got the work. The scope of work has grown since we asked them to quote that work. So it's likely that we're gonna be back before this board with either this contractor or some other contractor with a new estimate. I agree with the resident that equipment adds value to the neighborhood. Just like we talk about the paths, it's pretty safe to say that folks who are gonna sell their home, that real estate agent is gonna look around and say, there's a playground, there's a park within walking distance. It's gonna be a selling feature. It'll improve property values. But you may recall that the last time we did this project, we spent somewhere around $20,000 to relocate equipment from Selfridge Air Base to our waterfront park. So, you know, we paid to have the equipment removed and stored, and that was thousands of dollars. We're probably looking at a substantial sum that this board's gonna look at. But having the equipment sit is doing nobody any good. If we went out and purchased that equipment, it's probably $80,000 worth of playground equipment. And I do believe it'll benefit the community. The problem is, the way that the equipment was removed and the work that was done to cut it off is gonna require somebody with a little more creativity or, common sense to basically, insert, weld on, improve this so that it can be reinstalled. And we've been in discussions with a contractor. If they are unable to do it, then we'll have to send it out for quotes again and bring it back before the board. So,
Supervisor, can I just comment on that
Sure.
real quickly? Because I know our planner has submitted a site plan
yes.
for Ronnie Park, which includes some tree removal, placement of the playground equipment, and some other improvements to that park as well. I think
sir.
signage and, because I know, so anyway, I just want to make sure when we come back to the board with that, you know, that we fully execute that site plan.
Absolutely. That was one of, that's, and I certainly don't want to say it's one of the delays. That's a little bit, but before we said, let's go and take a triangular piece of property and put some playground equipment, we asked the planner to take a look. Where's the best place to position it? And he did indicate, you know, in the narrow end, it kind of made sense. Let's put the equipment there. We might remove some trees that are damaged or, you know,
Just for space.
unhealthy. Position that equipment, but still leave the majority of the field open, whether or not, you know, kids want to play, you know, baseball, football, soccer in the area, or they want to set up a tent for a, you know, community picnic, neighborhood picnic. So we do have plans from the planner on how to install, where to install. There is a need to remove some trees, and this board will have that, those costs back before them in the near future.
They might change home run derby there, because it was always, if you got it to the tree line, that was a home run.
That was a home
so-
run, yeah. And it's kind of funny that way. You remember those things about, I mean, you know,
Growing up
where
over
Mr. Capral's home is that's where we played ball, and we had similar, you know, ideas, so
Yeah.
we don't want to ruin that for future generations in that neighborhood.
Just one thing for the board. We got some sort of good news on Friday. We got our preliminary score back from our grant to the Michigan Trust Fund, Natural Resource Trust Fund grant. Our preliminary score was 320 out of 520, which we can provide some additional submittals to increase our score. I know offhand we're going to be able to add 50 points to that score pretty quickly. And Wade Trim seemed to think we could add a couple, some more points on top of that 50 points. Last year, funding, any plan over 210 was funded. So depending on the amount of applicants they got, we sort of seem to be in a good spot for that grant. So
This is for the parcel?
this is for the trail through the
Yep.
parcel there. So seems like we're in a good spot for it.
Excellent. And also a reminder, this board is aware, and for the folks at home, the 29th, let's see, that would be 2 weeks from tomorrow, or no, a week from today, I'm sorry. A week from today is our public hearing where we reveal the plan for waterfront redevelopment at Crocker and Jefferson. So we encourage folks to come out a week from today. I believe that's at 7 o'clock. To come take a look at the plan. So that's important unveiling. It is available online, so for folks who might not be available, you can go to the website and there's a link where you can review the plan. But next week is the public hearing. Any other board comments? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
We've got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Caprell to adjourn at 8:11. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Board, meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Has anyone ever opposed the